Welcome everyone to our virtual staff room Techy Tuesday updates. These are the updates that came in from Google in February. So I'm kind of retrospectively going through those. And these are just those that affect admin users or significant user interface changes that the admin user and admin people need to be aware of. So we'll work our way through them as quick as we can. So first one then, participants in the Google Meet polls and Q&As you can now have on a Chrome base. So if you've got a Chrome base for meetings in one of your meeting rooms as your video conference, then you've got the option to use polls and Q&As in that now. Okay. The only thing to be aware of is that the person who's in charge of the meeting has to actually initiate those polls and Q&As from a mobile or a web device. They can't actually start them inside the Chrome base. But if other people are on a Chrome base, then they can actually be actively involved in those question and answers and the polls. So that's quite a nice little thing. Adds a bit of extra interactivity into your video conferencing spaces. Next thing, Currents is on its way out, not being used enough, as is always the rule that Google follows, that if things just aren't being used, then eventually they get kicked off. Yeah, and some great things have disappeared in the past, which is a great shame. Currents, I don't think, is one of those great things necessarily. It wasn't particularly well used by anyone, including myself. It wasn't a particularly brilliant interface. And the plan is that all of those things all the functionality you get in Currents will eventually move into Spaces. And you've probably seen that already Spaces is getting more and more kind of higher functions that you can do. So you can integrate with Google Calendar and add bots and files and all sorts of nice little things coming to that. But you've got plenty of time to do it. So if you are big Currents users, you've got until 2023 sometime to get rid of it. Eventually all the communities will be forced across by Google at their end, but you can sort of start to plan now to move things across. So you do it on your terms rather than on theirs. But that's happening by 2023. So you've got plenty of time yet. Okay, so Google Voice calls to European numbers are now included in the license. So you pay your standard license for Google Voice, and based on that, you now get a whole lot of European calls included in that cost. So they are 0 rated in terms of their price. You do need to be aware of it, and I've put the link in here when Chris shares this slide deck out. You need to check the places you phone because there's some strange anomalies. So Italy, for example, is 0 rated now, so it's included in your license cost, but the Isle of Man isn't. So you think, well, why on earth is that? Because the Isle of Man's, I know it's a state, what's it called, a crown dependency, but it is technically part of the United Kingdom, but it costs to phone the Isle of Man, but it doesn't cost to phone Italy anymore, other than your Google Voice license costs. So do please check the link on the page when you get this shared with you. Search chips, you've heard me ranting and raving about search chips before. I absolutely love these things. The smart chips is the big kind of tool that covers them all, because you've got smart chips in Google Docs, and you've also got the search chips in your Drive and in your Mail. But it'll actually now give you more options, be able to specify the location where the things are shared, and when eventually, if you are an organization that's able to use the labels, you'll also be able to do it with search by labels as well. So it's just giving you a bit more finer details in the filtering, so you're able to find documents that bit quicker. So it's just improvements to the search chips in your Google Drive. This is another thing that's going to go. People currently can still work with classic Hangouts. If you're new to Google, you might not even know that Hangouts used to be a thing. Hangouts was Google Chat and Google Meet combined. It was an earlier version of that. They separated them out into Chat and Meet as two separate tools and apps, but it was originally called Hangouts. Currently, you can have them both, but very soon, beginning March 21st, it's going to start to move those away, and from there'll be no way to create new ones, and it's just about slowly removing that. And I think it's about the middle of the summer, excuse me, sometime when those will go completely. So just to be aware that Hangouts will eventually go, and everything will be pushed into Chat. So on the Education Plus account, and only on the Education Plus account in the education world, you've now got a migrate tool. So if you are a multi-academy trust with multiple Google tenancies, so each of your schools has got their own admin panel, and you could start to use this tool if you have Education Plus to migrate them all into a single tenancy, just to rationalize it so you as admin don't have to log into multiple admin panels to manage multiple schools. And that should now be generally available for everyone, but only on the Education Plus license, not Teach and Learning, not on Standard, and not on the Fundamentals. Okay, this is a new one. I'm sure you're already aware of all the data loss protection rules that you can write to stop things being shared inadvertently out of your organization. But there's a whole load of more content detectors, and you can see the list there: legal briefs, court orders, tax documents. So these basically reduce the work that you need to do. So you can say, I want to do a data protection loss rule that doesn't allow sharing of anything that's got tax documents in it, and it knows your local region, so it knows what tax information looks like. So if it suspects it's tax information, it will then prevent that document from being shared, but you don't have to write complicated lines of code to define what that tax document is. That's already built into that detector, so it kind of saves you a great deal of time in terms of creating those rules and increasing the security of your Google workspace. So those are really great things to be aware of. Particularly interesting things that I think are quite nice little additionals are things like the systems log. So if you're regularly taking systems log and you start sharing it out with another person, that's a reason for concern, because there might be some sensitive information there. And resumes, people don't think about resumes because they think, well, I'm sharing it because I'm sharing it with a conference I'm presenting at, without realizing your resume has also got your home address on it, for example. So there's some things that people share quickly without too much thought. Others, like tax documents, I suspect that will happen far less because your finance manager will be on the ball, but some other ones might not be in the same file. So to have them automatic detectors that save you time is a great additional tool. And that's it. Only a small number of detectors of updates this month, and the next date for updates is April the 5th. And that's the Google updates for February.